Item number 2 is Thursdays on the Beach Summer Concert Series. Tony? Not this Tony. Tony Gomilli.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and Julie's here to, I believe. Julie, are you here? Yeah. In case we have any questions, you have actually 2 applications from 2 different chambers in your application. One is for 2018, one is for 2017, and this is the 2018 season.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. We have been given 2 special event permits that are on my agenda. One is for the Greater Navarre Chamber to host a 2018 summer concert series on Navarre Beach in the Marine Park Sound side. It's been submitted well in advance to go through the proper channels and whatnot. So that is on the agenda this morning, and I don't know if you want to go through that first and then talk about the second one next.
Yeah, we'll take each of the agenda items in order.
Okay.
I did have one question looking at this special event permit. There would be a use of the pavilion for extended period of time, but I don't see in here the rental costs being taken care of. Tony, I see you nodding your head back there behind me. Is that something that the Greater Area Navarre Chamber of Commerce is looking to satisfy? If we're renting those pavilions out, that we need to have
it is, Mr. Chairman. In planning for the 2018 Summer Concert Series on the beach, I had discussions with the beach office, and because our proposed location would block access on concert nights to the last pavilion on the far east end of the Navarre Beach Marine Park, we understand that it's only fair that we be required to reserve that pavilion for each of those Thursday nights through the 15 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just want to make sure that we have that amended and added to Thursday's discussion. If this item moves forward, that we have that added in there for the record, that those fees would be taken care of. You can see the information in the backup, gentlemen. Does anybody have a question about this request that's before us? Commissioner Parker.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, or maybe for Julie. How far ahead of time do we approve these events? And I guess sort of a hypothetical question is, would there stop any organization from coming tomorrow and applying for a 2019 venue?
That's a good question, Commissioner Parker. In the past, the good example that I can use might be something like the concert, the Country on the Sound. We really, the county had to team together really quickly to pull something like that off, and we did. We pulled that off. It was a group effort for the whole county employees, and that was only 90, 120 days out, if I remember. So when you're dealing with beach, it's something we like to far in advance, simply because there's turtle nesting issues, turtle lighting issues, noise ordinance issues, then, just a lot of different issues that come along with hosting an event on the Gulf of Mexico, whether it be beachside or sound side. Now, then there's shorebird nesting, beach mice. There's all kinds of different issues that we can run across. So the further notice that we have in advance, the better that we are prepared as, Santa Rosa County government is prepared to host such events.
But we don't have a standard policy, do we, Tony, on that at this point?
We do not.
Okay, it's a good question. Well, might be something we want to take up. Yes?
Yeah, obviously, there's some people that have concerns about this that I spoke with, and I don't know if we're going to hear from anybody else, but would there be anything to prohibit another group from going ahead and applying for a 2019 permit for a similar venue?
No.
Or is it something we want to look at putting in a time restriction? And I tell you, I guess the elephant in the room is that we have 2 Navarre chambers now.
Correct.
And I understand there's some litigation and different things. I'm not totally vetted on the comprehensive history on how we, over the last year, have gotten 2 Navarre chambers. So I don't know if now it's something we need to look at setting a time frame, and then within a time frame, we have a lottery type system, or how we're gonna handle that going forward, but, it seems like obviously that's really gonna be an issue that's not, not gonna go away, so, just wanted to bring that up to make sure that we're offering an equitable opportunity for both chambers here, on these back-to-back agenda items.
I would just point out, too, that the two applications are for two different locations. So that's important to know. But do you have any further questions?
No, that,
This current location would be Soundside.
I follow
Yeah.
that, I just,
Excuse me.
I didn't know if, I can't imagine us
Well,
having competing events. so
No,
to speak.
I don't want to ever have competing events in Santa Rosa County. My department, we are here for the promotion of tourism, and we want to bring tourist-related events that's going to be good for our community, but good for our tourists. That's what my goal is to increase tourism in this county. Therefore, events, are great for our tourists that are here. I'm for that. Everything needs to be done in a proper channel of events, though, to make things happen this way.
Yeah, I'm not against the event at all, I just
Right.
want to make sure that everybody's getting a fair shake at the deal, so to speak.
Right.
Thank you, Commissioner Parker. Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Parker, you hit the nail right on the head. I appreciate you beating me to the microphone today. But looking at both of these, I see exactly what you're seeing. And I think we need to nip this in the bud because basically we do have two chambers of commerce, and they're making their problems our problem. And I would suggest, as you did, either a lottery or, since it's already falling in line for 17 for one, 18 for the other, that remain the course we follow. And if one chamber says we don't want to have it this year, that gives the chamber the option to pick it up. But we need to set some policy until they get this settled down there on the south end as far as how many chambers of commerce they're going to have. And that's just a suggestion, just like Commissioner Parker's was, but I think it's only prudent for us to just kind of head this thing off before we, as he said, somebody could come in and ask for the next 4 or 5 years. And we don't have any options available right now. So I'd like to look at some options on that. Thank you.
The application that we have before us is for a Thursdays on the Beach concert series at the Sandpiper Pavilion. And we have an organization that has every right to put forward that application, and I want to make sure that we're focused in on that with the comments that have been made. Tony?
Yeah, Mr.
Go
Chairman,
ahead.
and Commissioner Parker, thank you for the question. It's a great question. To kind of lay the timeline for our decision to submit in as early as we did for 2018, the effort to organize such an event is going to be all volunteer and probably run the better part of the remainder of this year. We didn't want to be scrambling at the end of 2017 with an approval for a 2018 concert series to pull it all together. Again, it's going to be all volunteer, and it's probably going to take the better part of 9 or 10 months to make sure that we've got all our ducks in a row to kind of duplicate an event the size of Bands on the Beach. I certainly understand your position about there not being a policy in place with the county that kind of dictates timeline for submission of these events. But I would also ask that you guys understand that it's kind of unreasonable to expect a group of volunteers to commit to 9 or 10 months worth of planning only to have the end result of that planning be a non-approval, which may be the case today. But we want to seek preliminary early approval so that we can begin the heavy lifting of pulling the event together.
Any more comments? Go
I
ahead.
was just going to address Tony.
Commissioner Parker.
I appreciate it, and I'm definitely not saying that 2 is a negative. I think it's sort of like the capitalist economy we have. Sometimes it creates ingenuity and competition and good things. So again, I'm not opposed to either item that's going to come before us today. I just want to really, and it may be something we address obviously in the near future, set an equitable standard to where, you know, I don't want to become if we're going to have more than one entity, I just don't want it to be monopolistic to either one. I want it to be equitable. So that's why I voiced those opinions, and I appreciate what you're doing as well as the other chamber for obviously trying to bring tourism and things to the beach, even for our locals to enjoy. So.
Yes, sir. And you may have said elephant in the room a few minutes ago, and I can tell you that that's not a factor in our decision-making, and what the Navarre Beach Area Chamber of Commerce does is great, and they should continue to do it. The only action of theirs that we considered in our determination to submit an application was the fact that as early as this month, they had not taken the opportunity to move the event out of Navarre Park. So we were going to submit an application regardless of whether or not they submitted for 2017, but we wanted to get our application in early to allow time to plan for the event. So.
That was going to be my question, is what was knowing that there's been an existing Thursdays in the Park concert series for quite some time, what was the reason for bringing one forward? And if I'm hearing you correctly, the reason for bringing one forward was that up until last month, there was still plans to keep the series in Navarre Park, and there was no plan to move the event to the beach.
Not that we're aware of.
Okay, and is there been any, since you're both up here together at this point, have you talked about coordinating with our tourist office and how we can make this series similar to the one that's in Pensacola, and in that it's very much for the community, it's very much in support of the Santa Rosa County tourism businesses that depend on us to continue growing our tourism economy, but it's also for the community. Is there any talks of partnership there, and if so, what would that look like?
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, Mr. Alexander has came to me, asked to meet with me regarding how we could help with that event, how they could be possibly eligible for our annual grant funding program for this event, which I've encouraged them to do, of course. It falls in line with what we hand out our money for the grant program. But my main thing when I've talked to him was that Pensacola Beach has been so successful with their bands on the beach. I have been there, and just so I could see, what type of event it was. And I did say, we need this. I've said this actually several months ago. We need these concerts to be out on our beach in a location, after talking with the county engineer and the right people with the county, somebody would need to talk with, to see where it's feasible to have it, so that we're not disturbing any wildlife or environmental type protection. So I am completely for this being on the beach. I think it's going to be an area that can draw a much larger crowd. I think it's going to be easily accessible for our tourists who are staying out there on those rentals on the beach, where they can physically walk to it. There'll be enough space. The parking won't be an issue. It's just, to me, it's the right place to have it. And yes, we have discussed partnering together.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just give me this. I'm all for the event. I appreciate the early planning, everything that's been discussed. I agree with Commissioner Parker that we need to just head off a future problem, and we could take that up later as a different discussion item, but I just see that train coming down the track, so just know that it needs to be in the conversation, and I agree with moving it out to the beach. That venue, fortunately, has grown to a point where it's, safety issues out there on Highway 98. We're all aware of that. I want to see it stay in place, but we got to come up with a fair and equitable way to have both chambers work together on this. And that may be the ultimate result. Y'all work together and put on a big concert. So y'all work that problem out, but I'm thinking we need to have that on our plate to know that we're not going to get into a race to put in these applications. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, and to kind of piggyback on Commissioner Cole's statement there, and I appreciate it, please know that as far as we're concerned, there is no them versus us. And in Santa Rosa County, we have chambers that compete, you know, the Santa Rosa County Chamber and the Pace Chamber. The Panama City Beach Chamber has coexisted with the Bay County Chamber since 1979. The city of Pensacola has a robust chamber, and they have an African American Chamber of Commerce in Pensacola. So we're all eating from a pretty big pie. And I don't think as we go forward, and historically, and as time progresses, you will hear from both organizations with requests to do similar things. I hope that it doesn't become a political issue that you guys are put in a position to have to pick favorites, because that wouldn't be fair to you. We're an organization, they're an organization, we're growing. We're going to have to continue to expand what we do, and this is just, you know, one incarnation of that. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today, too.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyncher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I echo some of the concerns that have been brought up here. And the primary concern I have is that both events are going to be on Thursday night, a stone's throw from one another. And how is that good for either entity to have these competing events on the beach? I mean, if it's for the community, if it's to get people out there and build an event, why not have a Wednesday night concert, a Thursday night concert? Why have them both on the same night when the prior entity had, or the other entity, had this concert series? I don't know how many years they've been going on out there.
10 years, I think. And I was involved with probably 5 of those. Not competing concerts on the same night. Their application is for 17. Our application is for 2018. If you approve 2018 today, I can't imagine that somebody else would submit an application for 2018 on the same night to do a Thursday night concert series. Thursdays are successful. You can't argue with the fact that that's a good night for concerts. The number of folks that show up supports it. It's as close as you can get to the weekend without doing a concert on a Friday night and having to compete with Friday Night Lights, which is the chief driver behind doing a Thursday concert series. But to answer your question, not competing concerts a quarter of a mile from each other on the same night.
And I think
Certainly.
you did answer my question.
That would be terrible.
You did answer my question, but in a different way. So you're preemptively jumping ahead of them on the Thursday night concert series. They've built it up for years and years and years, and they've applied for 2017, and come next year, Thursday's taken.
No, not at all.
Okay.
They had not applied for 2017 when our application for 2018 went in. And they had not taken the advice of Commissioner Williamson, as was reported in the media, to move the event to the beach. So again, as I said earlier, we didn't make our decision based on the fact that they were or were not going to hold an event on the beach. When we submitted our application, there was no approved summer concert series at all for 2017 or 2018. We just knew that we couldn't pull it together in the short amount of time that we have between now and when the concert would start in May. We really need the better part of the remainder of this year to plan so we can do it right.
We could, at this time, we have members of the public that want to speak, and I know that these 2 requests are, for, you know, like it or not, they're aligned, so I understand that the conversations may overlap. Just want to try our level best to keep the conversations on the application that's before us now and the request that's before us now. If members of the public would like to comment on this specific request, then I see that we have Cheryl here. If you would, please name and address for the record. Good morning.
Good morning, Board. My name is Michelle Tucker at 2742 Noah Jordan Road. I am here to ask that at this present time that you deny or delay this request because of the earliness of the nature. You're over a year out on this, and a lot of things can happen during that time. The organization that's come before you to make this request has only been in existence just over 6 months. They formed as a Greater Navarre Chamber of Commerce on August 1st, 2016. Currently, their membership is roughly about 50 members. That's individual and business members. And because of that, I have grave concerns about their financial ability to support a summer-long series that is on the beach is going to take a lot of coordination. As Mr. Alexander mentioned, it's a coordination of volunteer events, and their current place and registered place of business is a local restaurant in Navarre. So I wonder how they're able to meet and organize and put forth such a large event that would be similar to the one that's been in existence for over 10 years in the Navarre Park. As reference to the night of the movies, or the Thursday night concert series, unless it changes, the Pier has done a Wednesday night movie on the beach. And I think that that's been well received. I don't know if they continue to do it or will continue to offer it, but I know that that has become a Wednesday night event that a lot of people enjoy. Thursday nights, as he said, was also a good night for the concerts in the park. It's a segue into the weekend and the events that are coming, but it's also kind of the calming or the final straw of the final events of the week for people that are here visiting our area. The tourism that comes through on the beach, everybody is notified. I work with Century 21, y'all know that. We have resorts out there on the island. We are providing them the schedule for the summer series, and they're making that part of their Thursday night here when they're visiting Navarre. To say that this chamber, the two chambers are in competition, unfortunately they are. It's just a fact that's out there. The public is confused why there are two chambers. They don't know what's going on between the two series of musics in the park or out on the beach. And when you talk about whether or not the Navarre area, Beach Area Chamber of Commerce made application, I know that they did at some point. I don't know the time frame. I do know that they've been in discussions with the powers that be trying to find a solution to the safety concerns. I've attended their meetings to hear what their reports are. They've been trying to find a viable alternative place that offers everyone something good that resolves the problems. One of the main things that has been a positive with having the music in the park is the fact that you've got parents that are able to sit by and enjoy the water, and you have a great playground that the kids can go and play and run. And when we move that from Navarre Park, which I understand that that's where we're headed, you lose that component because there's not a playground on the beach that allows children to play in the sand or they can play in the sand, but they don't have any swings or playground equipment to enjoy. And that gives parents a little bit of break while they can still see them over there, but they can enjoy the music. And so there's got to be a happy place for everyone to come together. But I don't think that applying for a year out at this point in time until, as Mr. Cole has said, we've got issues down in the South End that need to be resolved. There's never been a truer statement. There is a competition, and we need to figure out what's best and equitable for everyone. But you've got an organization that's been here for 41 years, has established a track record for 10 years with this concert series, and I don't know that they've been offered an opportunity to work with the TDC for grant money. If they have, and they haven't taken it, shame on them. If they haven't been offered the same opportunity, then it needs to be equal for both groups. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can assure you they have been afforded that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ironically, there's a pledge of civility on the podium here. And when the Greater Navarre Area Chamber of Commerce was founded in August of 2016, we made a conscious decision at that point to not engage in mudslinging, and we haven't since, and we don't intend to. The county's application process for a special event does not include information about the financial health of the organization. Any member of the Greater Navarre Area Chamber of Commerce is more than welcome, in accordance with IRS tax law, to come look at our books, We also do not operate out of a restaurant. The fact that we don't have a brick and mortar facility at this point is a decision made by the board to keep costs down as we continue to grow, and we are one of the fastest growing chambers of commerce in the Panhandle. We've only started taking memberships since September 14th of this year, of 2016, I'm sorry. And as Michelle pointed out, we are in excess of 50 members. Doesn't matter if they're individual members or business members. We're growing our membership, but we are equally as responsible and qualified an organization as any to come before you to ask for approval for a special event permit. If we were a small nonprofit looking to hold a run on Navarre Beach, then we wouldn't ask that you think you should deny us because the Navarre Chamber Foundation has the Run for the Reef and they bring out a couple of 400 or 500 people every year. So the application is before you. We think we tick all the boxes. I do agree with Commissioner Cole and Commissioner Parker that maybe the BOCC should look at putting some sort of policy in place that determines how far out these applications can go in. One doesn't exist now, but I can tell you in fairness to the organization that would be doing the heavy lift, that it is, I mean, to pull it off and do it right, we need a long time, and to expect that somebody spends 9 or 10 months doing that work only to not have the event approved is unreasonable. So, but just so that's on the record, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, gentlemen. I'd just like to give a little background on our research.
If you would, Judy, just name and address for the record,
Judy
please.
Moorhead,
Thanks.
the president of the Navarre Chamber of Commerce, 8543 Navarre Parkway, Navarre, Florida. I thought it might be helpful. I was trying to not do it until my time got up here, but to give a little background, last summer during the concert series, Norm Crowder and I met with Roy Andrews, Bob Johnson, and Wendell Hall, and the discussion surrounded the safety of Thursdays in the Park. We agreed that adding 2 more officers for the event was in the best interest of the community. In September, I began talking with Commissioner Williamson about the safety issues surrounding Thursdays in the Park, and he expressed to me that he and Tony Gamillion had had a brief conversation that we were having discussion concerning that issue. We decided to have some monthly meetings. We weren't able to do that because some things came up. But in the meantime, I did talk to Julie and the TDC about possibly applying for a grant in 2017. Of course, that grant has not opened up for us to make application for either chamber. But we did talk about the best place to be was on the beach. So I have had that discussion with our commissioner, and I've also had the discussion with the TDC. And we kind of were still hoping that we could have it in the park, even in the January 23rd meeting when I was here speaking, it was alluded to that we might possibly still be able to do it. So we did submit an application on February the 6th, and that application was pulled because we were applying for Thursdays in the Park. And so we had that discussion again about safety issues. Now, my purpose for submitting that, even though that I knew the FDOT was not in favor of it, the Sheriff's Department was not in favor of it, our board was not necessarily in favor of it if it was a safety issue, and I knew the BOCC would not be in favor of it, I felt like that would be a venue to get it in front of you to have discussion. But on further discussion with Mr. Gamillion, we decided that I would come onto the agenda just to have the conversation and not put it in there as an application. Seeing that was not going to be approved, we had already started looking for a location to have it on the beach. And, we don't air our laundry. We try to get all our ducks in a row before we actually submitted the application. So we've been working on this since last year, September of last year, trying to find a location on the beach. So this isn't just suddenly we decided to do it. And I'm aware that one of the concerns, from my understanding in the media, was that we were not going to do it. And that's why they were stepping forward to do it. Obviously, we are willing and we have been working diligently. Like them, you can't wait till the last minute. That's why we've been working on it since September. So just having said that, I just wanted to bring in the background of some things that maybe everybody's not aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And we'll probably address some of those comments after we get through with this particular agenda item. Good morning, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Jersey Jerry Foster, wild and crazy guy, residing at 7860 Lola Circle in Navarre for the last 11 and a half years. I commend Tony and his group trying to do something that has been tremendously successful for our community for 10 years. I had planned to speak next on our event that we've been doing for 10 years under item 3. I come before you at this time just to question the parking at the Sandpiper. As co-founder of the Pirates on the Panhandle, we have rented that pavilion many times over the years. Our organization is 7.5 years old, so we've had it about 4 or 5 times, and we thank our county administrator currently for allowing us to do it again this year. Parking at that pavilion, I'm guessing if you look at the map, probably is about 25, 30 cars. The majority of the people that come, as Ms. Tucker had mentioned, are tourists that are older, senior citizens, or young families with kids. There's no playground area there. There's a lot of sand, of course. The water is good distance from the pavilion. In order for people to park, they're going to have to park at another pavilion and then carry their chairs, their libations and dinners, as a lot of people do. And I just question that particular location as being a viable location for an event that's going to host anywhere from 500 to we've had as many as almost 2,000 people in years past. So I just come before you to have you check the map to look at the parking and the distance that people are going to have to travel for that event, if in fact you do say yes, they can have it. I thank you for your time, and I'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you. Bring this in for a landing.
Commissioners. Thanks, Jersey Jerry, for the kind words. And just so you guys are clear, we have not asked to use that last pavilion to house the concerts. And while it's still early in the planning stages, not to use the pavilion. That's the closest pavilion.
We need to keep the conversations on the record, if we could, please.
Yeah, to answer your question, Jerry, that's the closest pavilion to the location that we desire to set up a temporary stage. One of the, with the current Thursdays in the park, we have folks that are parking on the north side of 98 and a block off of 98 and having to walk to Navarre Park. There's parking within proximity of that last pavilion. There's ample parking within proximity of that last pavilion. There's also, if there were a concert, temporary stage housed near that pavilion, there's also an additional pavilion coming online, I believe, which may add additional parking. The reason the pavilion's included in the application is that if we use the parking lot nearest that pavilion for spectators, then we would need to block access to the pavilion. For public safety reasons, we couldn't allow cars to drive down that dedicated access road to that pavilion. So we're not asking you to approve an event where we would put a band in the pavilion and ask people to sit outside the pavilion and stare up at it. We think that's a bad idea, but we would need to block access to the pavilion. And one of the other ideas that we've kicked around is providing some sort of transportation solution, if it's golf carts or something, to help with folks with handicapped accessible needs that may need to get from the closest handicapped accessible parking to the venue. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? I'm prepared to go ahead, Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has it been determined, I heard from Ms. Tucker that they were still concerned with the likelihood or the want to have it in the park. Then I heard from the director of the chamber, or the president of the chamber, of the Navarre Chamber, that pretty much the determination's been that that's off the table. So I'd like to make sure we're clear. Everybody's targeting the beach park at this point. Both entities are targeting that, and the concerts in the park have pretty much been deemed overgrown and unsafe at this point.
There you go.
Ta-da. We had discussion last summer with the attorney and Bob and Wendell Hall, And they, at that time, were concerned because 98 was so full. And then, like I said, Rob and I started having conversation about it as well. We thought we might be able to do something in conjunction with the FDOT. And I've had discussion with them. We talked about message boards and different things. But I think everybody is in agreement that the event has grown so popular. The 98's traffic is it's too much at risk. We can make them go down. There's a crosswalk.
Sure.
But I don't think that that's
Okay.
smart.
I just
So
want to make
that's-
sure that
no,
to fill both chambers.
We would love it, and we have
people.
members that are very upset because it may not be there, but our options are to either cancel the event totally or move it to the beach.
Okay, I understand. I just wanted a clarification on that. So this board and everybody out there listening knows that it's been determined by both chambers and the district commissioner and also, our sheriff and DOT that that's unsafe and this is the new agenda or place for this particular item. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and since I keep getting thrown in to the mix here with conversations that I had or meetings that I've had or things that I've determined, I didn't determine anything. This has been going on for years about this particular location, that it poses a safety risk and it's a logistical nightmare. Every Thursday afternoon at 5 o'clock, we have not one consistent time where people might be crossing 4 lanes of the busiest roadway we have in Santa Rosa County. They're doing it all throughout the evening. And our lead safety professional in Santa Rosa County, our former sheriff and now our new sheriff, have said that they will not supply Santa Rosa County sheriff's officers to work the event. That wasn't a decision that I had anything to do with. That was a decision from the sheriff that he would no longer allow his deputies to work this event. And so this is not something that I determined. That's not my role. That's not our role here, to pick winners and losers between the two chambers. If this chamber has been around, or this organization has been around for 5 minutes or 5 years, if they want to submit an application to have an event and they want to pay the fees to have an event, then that's their right to do so. It's our responsibility to decide if we want to allow this entity to have an event in that pavilion. That's the only decision that's before us. How long they've been in place and how many members they have and where their office is located, I don't know that is relevant. But the decision before us is no different than any other organization that wants to put forward a special event application. And I like the flexibility of, if somebody wants to put in an application 3 years out, then this board should be able to determine if it's in the best interest of Santa Rosa County to entertain that particular entity wanting to have an event. So I kind of like the flexibility of not saying, within a year, we're not going to do something outside of a year because of all these unknowns. If they tick the boxes, as Mr. Alexander has said, and we believe it's in the best interest of Santa Rosa County to have the event there, and they pay the fees, then safety issues are taken care of. That's why we have this special event permit. So the only reason it looks like the event is going to be moved from Navarre Park is because our lead safety professional has said he'll no longer provide support for the event. Yes, sir. Norm?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name's Norm Crowder. I'm the past chair of the Thursdays in the Park, as many of you know me. My address is 8315 Navarre Parkway. I live at the Santa Rosa RV Resort and work there. My only concern with approving something this far out, you've got the chamber that's done this for 10 plus years. I've done it for the last 3. You're precluding them from actually turning in an application in 2018 by approving the other chamber's application for 2018. You think the county is big enough to support 2 Thursdays in the Park or 2 Thursday concert series, quarter mile from each other on Navarre Beach? I don't think so. So, it sounds to me, with talking with Judy, that the discussion was there and the application was actually turned down and put back to her a couple of times, where it could have actually been in several weeks earlier. But if you do approve the 2018 concert series, you're stopping the current chamber that's been there 40-plus years from having the same application turned in 2018. It's not going to be supported by enough people to, and I'm sure you wouldn't approve it, to have it, competing Thursday's concert series on the beach in 2 locations.
For me, I love competition, so that's not my decision to make. That's just me personally. But I do want to clear up one thing, because we've heard about that for some reason, maybe the county or this board has delayed or not allowed a application to come forward related to this event. There was no application that was put forward by the Navarre Chamber to move the event to the beach until the greater area Navarre Chamber put forward an application 4 days earlier. The only application that was put forward by the Navarre Chamber of Commerce was to keep the event in the Navarre Park. And that came as soon as 2 weeks ago. In February, we had the Navarre Chamber putting forward or trying to put forward an event application that our lead safety professional, our sheriff, had said he would not support. So why would this board review an application that doesn't have the support of our sheriff and lead safety professional? That would be irresponsible. So an application was put forward by the Navarre Chamber, but it was to keep the event in Navarre Park. There was no event application put forward to move the event to the beach until this application was put forward on the 14th. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that. The county has not received any application to move the location to the beach until the 14th, and that was 4 days after the other chamber put forward an application. And they only did so when it became clear that the current group that's holding Thursdays in the park was not going to submit an application to move the event.
Why, was there a deadline on submitting an application?
Absolutely not. But
Right.
if you're looking to plan for the next year, how long would you have another entity wait for the Navarre Chamber to finally decide this is not going to work in Navarre Park? And you've had every opportunity. The chamber has had every opportunity for years. I mean, I remember talking to Tony about this and chamber board members about this years ago, before I even came on the board. This was an issue when former Commissioner Melvin was on the board about that location. There was talks about pedestrian walkovers to the tune of $3 million,
Right.
where we could safely get people to this event to solve this problem. This is not something new. The Chamber Board of Directors, for whatever reason, has not wanted to put forward an application or has not had any interest in relocating the event to another location, even though they've known for years that this poses a serious safety risk.
I agree with you.
And it is a logistical issue. And I think it was, the folks with CERT, to have them manage the traffic control, I think the folks with CERT do an awesome job in support of
Right.
our law enforcement professionals, but not to replace our
They
law
were never brought in
enforcement
to
professionals.
replace. They were never brought in to replace. I asked them to come in to just support the sheriff's department, to direct them to that one location to cross the highway.
And we knew last year that the sheriff's department
Right.
was no longer going to provide deputies. So we're talking almost a year has gone by where the chamber did not talk about moving the event to the beach. They were still planning on having the event in Navarre Park as early as last month. We talked about having a open pay, or the open areas of the park. We were looking at a park policy where if you use the open areas, there would be a charge for that.
Right.
You and Judy and other members of the chamber came here to argue that if we added a fee to use of the open areas of the park, that would no longer allow the Navarre, the Thursdays in the Park series to go forward. At no time did you say, look, we're looking to move this to the beach and we want to use this area at the beach. It was still going to be in Navarre Park. So
Well, the fact of the matter is, they did not put in their application for this year. They put it in for next year, and I'm in agreement with Commissioner Parker that it shouldn't be that far out to have an approval of an application for that. I agree that it should be the year of. It always been that way that's we worked with. I didn't know that we ever approved anything that far out, but thanks for hearing me today.
Yep.
I'll be brief because I know you'd like to move this agenda along. Thank you for pointing out that our application did come in early February. So the board knows, I also submitted a letter to Commissioner Williamson stating our intent to complete the application in January of this year. And again, and for the record, because we keep, folks keep trying to drag us into this mudslinging, our decision to hold a 2018 summer concert series is not an us-them competition. We want to do a summer concert series, and we know that it's going to take a lot of planning to make it happen. And allowing us January to April to get that done wasn't realistic. So we made the determination to submit for 2018, and at that point, there had been no approval for any concert series. So just so that's on the record, we didn't say let's get it in before them. Let's get 2018 in, so they can't get 2018 in. We said, when realistically can we execute this event on the scale it needs to be executed? And the answer was 2018, and we followed the county process for submitting that application. So, and I think Commissioner Parker has a question.
Thank you. I'll go with Commissioner Parker and then Vice Chairman Cole.
Wanted to speak to one thing Norm said as well. I don't know the exact amount. I'd probably need to think about it a little bit more than one morning to say what would be a reasonable outlay that we would want to approve items. And I guess the number that kind of jumps in my head would maybe be 3 years because that would allow greater planning. But, on this, and I'll say this because you probably feel like you've been sort of bombarded. I know I don't know Tony very well there and shaking his hand a couple times, but I think it's kind of like capitalism. Competition, I agree with the chairman, is, I think, healthy. I think it brings about ingenuity. It brings, you would hope, a better product for the consumer. It's sort of a mantra that I try to look at in my position, and that is to challenge the status quo in an effort to improve things. And I feel like that's probably a big part of why y'all now are doing this. So I'm not opposed to what's before us, but I will go on the record of saying this, that before I would support an initiative for the following year prior to that, I do think that it would be very, and again, I say this because necessarily having a different entity, I agree with the chairman, it's not our place, I don't feel like, to say to the detriment of ingenuity or creativity or however you want to say it. I don't think it's our place to say, well, we're not going to allow somebody else to attempt something. But I definitely will say, before I would support anything coming further out than this issue that we're talking about right now, I would not support it from either organization here today nor a third-party organization without the board having in place whether we want to set, we're going to take applications during this period each year for a 2-year out or 3-year out window, or a lottery system or something, because I think it's been touched on, as Commissioner Lynchard said, we have to look at what's healthiest for the county, what's healthiest for the beach, the tourism, and I do think that it would be foolish to say, if we just allowed every entity that came along and wanted to have over competition, that we would be going backwards. So that's where I stand on it. I wanted to clarify that in case there was any question with Norm or with you, and those are pretty much wrap up my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support this because I think if it was the idea of the greater chamber to supplant the opportunities of the original chamber, that they would ask for 2017 and 18 possibly. So I'm going to support this. I want to see us go forward with these. And I agree with Commissioner Parker that I think staff's got the direction, or we maybe need to give them direction that we tighten up on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
The only comment I was going to add to Commissioner Parker, and just so you know, when you, as the board starts to consider some sort of timing with regard to these applications, when I was the president and CEO of the Navarre Beach Area Chamber of Commerce, I did submit applications a year in advance for large events like Fun Fest. So there has been at least some precedent established with getting these large-scale event applications in, you know, a year out. It's a challenge, I understand that, but I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of comments. I don't have a dog in the fight, but what I've heard is there are safety issues on Highway 98. I would encourage the board to, after this, create a policy on the deadline, how far in advance people need to submit applications. I think a greater question is, are we going to allow events in Navarre Park without proper safety? Thank you.
It's a good question. Yes, ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Romy White, 1942 Highway 87 South. I just want to step forward real quick and compliment our tourism office. I recently wrote a story about how well tourism's doing. I know that Ms. Morgan is asking for more funds, for more staff, and I'd like you guys to just consider the record and maybe give that to her and look to your county to the west. We're looking at Pensacola Beach and how they do bands on the beach so well. Who runs that organization? And, you know, even though I'm on the board of the new chamber, you know, if the tourism office can run it better than anybody, you know, empower them to do that, because these, I mean, that sort of, you know, and then the chambers can help, you know, maybe you allow one chamber to do the concessions at one and, you know, another one the next. But, you know, just maybe look at people who have done a successful event and how they're doing it. And maybe it's our TDO that needs to continue growing, you know, but because I don't like the divisiveness in Navarre. And I think people need to learn how to work well together. And we seem to struggle with doing that. And I think that, I know that I don't want to jump the gun, but I'll just reserve my comments for the next. Thank you.
Thank you. Wallace?
Wallace Mahout, 5500 Cox Road, Milton, Florida. I want to say I agree with Romy. I think earlier it was mentioned that whoever does put on the event would be recommended to work with the TDC. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, because years and years ago, my son joined the Navy, and we used to come down here and stay on Pensacola Beach. We didn't even know anything about how wonderful Navarre Beach was at that time. But they had bands on the beach down there. We knew nothing about it. Nobody at the hotels, you know, ever had that information. And so I just wanted to say it would be great to work with the TDC on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Wallace. I'd like to move this item to Thursday's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is now move into item number 1, Administrative Committee, Navarre Beach Pier Contract. Tony?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on your agenda, what really drove us to place this on the agenda was a request from Stephanie Maddox really to change the an ownership entity, if you would, that would be reporting to us, and that would require the board to act on that request. Also, there was the, in some of the submittal was the indication of a subcontract that exists relative to a kitchen contractor. I will say, and Mr. Andrews, I'll let him speak to it. Given that there is some pending litigation, I'm not sure what his advice might be relative to any action by the board today, but I'll let him speak to that.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Boyd.
We are aware that the only thing really maybe that all parties agree to is that there's ongoing litigation in regard to this, and there's a hearing that has been set actually for later on this week. So I think it would really be premature for the board to take action in regard to the request or review of the agreement at this time. Whatever the court decides, if there is a change in the ownership structure, which both sides are asking for, that's something that would come back before the board for approval, subject to the agreement that we have in place now.
Any members of the board comments on this matter?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Salter.
I agree with the county attorney. I think that anything we do today is premature, so let's wait and see what the judicial hearing provides.
Members of the public like to comment on this matter? No? Go ahead. Name and address for the record, please. Good morning.
Stephanie Maddox, 1851 Cowan Road, Gulf Breeze. I guess the urgency of the matter for me is I can't even perform my job with the partnership with Santa Rosa County and Coastal Concessions because these are simple facts. Since December 8th, he's illegally removed me from Sunbiz. With his false documentations, ran around, removed me from bank accounts, from the payroll company. We ran for 1 whole month without workman's comp insurance because he wouldn't pay the payroll, and I could not even access the documents or transfer the money. So I have since then created, I've already spoke with Tony about it, a new company, SJ Maddox Enterprise LLC, to be able to pay not only our employees that are working, but the employees that are working on the pier side in a timely manner with all of the insurance, workman's comp, all the things that need to do. So it is something that is a right now matter. It can't wait till Thursday. You know, payday's tomorrow. And the Beach Community Bank they want to cancel our accounts because Mr. Rayner has went to every single branch in the whole panhandle and raised enough mayhem that, you know, and he has disregarded, you know, any laws with the FCLLA regarding corporations and that we're in litigation. He just changes it anyway. You know, he's done whatever he's wanted to do. You know, I do appreciate, though, the attention from the media that the lawsuit has given us because he's actually showed up for work 2 weekends in a row. You know, he wasn't there Monday through Friday, but he was there Saturday and Sunday. You know, a little bit of help taking out the trash. It's been much needed for 3 years now.
Thank you. I'm interested in what's in the best interest of Santa Rosa County as it relates to the pier and taking our attorney's recommendation that we should let the litigation run its course. I agree. I just want to make sure, first and foremost, that the monies that are collected that are due Santa Rosa County, do we have confidence that that is being taken care of and that we are current?
I confirmed with the finance department this morning that the payments are current and the requirements that are in the latest amended contract in regard to the point of sale and the receipts are being followed at this point. There's a good amount of controversy between the parties, the other parties to the contract, as to why that is the case, but as of this point, we've not been able to determine that there's any monies that are due to Santa Rosa County that have not been paid.
Okay, so our fiduciary responsibilities are being met at this point.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. And we believe that by the next set of county commissioner meetings that we will have some resolution between the two parties and the board can make a decision on if we want to move forward with continuing on with the lease for the remainder of the term or take some alternate action?
There is a hearing set this week. The court does not have to make a determination at that hearing, but I mean, that's up to the circuit court judge, but we would anticipate that there would be a resolution sooner rather than later.
Okay. I think it would be something that the board would want to consider that even if the current leaseholder or current vendor that we have runs through the remainder of their lease, we still have to look at what the future is going to be for the pier and for that entire area. And I feel like we should consider going out for an RFP for a consultant to help us craft a master site plan. We have county-owned property there at the entrance to the pier. We're talking about doing new signage. We're talking about protected pedestrian walk across there at Gulf Boulevard. We're talking about adding on to restroom facilities at the pier. We're talking about new restroom facilities at the main parking area. Ms. Martin's property there is currently in material default with them continuing to stay unopened. Perhaps we could look at giving additional flexibility to their lease to where they could have other commercial operations. Right now, it's restricted to being a restaurant only, and it doesn't look like that has been all that successful. But that entire area there, we need to kind of figure out what we want to be when we grow up. And I think this is an opportunity that we could take this year to plan and put forward what the future of the pier would look like and what the future of a tourism destination place right there off Gulf Boulevard would be. I'd like to throw that out there as something that the next set of county commission meetings we could talk about in earnest. You may see an RFP discussion comes forward. But just as an initial thought there, do any of my fellow board members have any comments on that idea? Mr. Parker?
Mr. Chairman, I like where you're going with that, at least the direction. The only note that I had made to myself is not sure what contingency plan, if any, we have in place for situations like this, or, if, say, we had an entity and there wasn't this dispute, but maybe the managing partner passed away and it went into chaos. I mean, this is a big source of revenue and an attraction for us and longest pier in the state, so try to brag on it. So I would just try to piggyback off the suggestion when we look at it for future. I think this would be a good time to look at having a contingency plan in place so that if we do have a problem arise or a company is not able to fulfill their obligation to, exercise at the pier, that we would have something without having a big delay in the revenue. So.
Okay. No further comments? Yes, sir?
Yes, Robert Rushing. I represent Stephanie Maddox. My address is 801 West Romana Street, Suite A, Pensacola, Florida. And I just want to clarify what's being, so you guys have a knowledge of what's being heard on Thursday before the court, is Mr. Rayner has moved for an injunction against Ms. Maddox as being part of Coastal Concessions. Your contract is with Coastal Concessions, Mr. Rayner, and Ms. Maddox. So regardless of what the court decides, Ms. Maddox still has a personal obligation to fulfill that contract. So I just don't want there to be any misconception that Thursday something's going to be figured out, because essentially what they've asked to be done is that there's an injunction to prevent Ms. Maddox from doing what she's supposed to do under a contract with Santa Rosa County. But Santa Rosa County is not part of the litigation. So my personal opinion is I don't think the judge is going to be able to do anything Thursday. So and I certainly understand and don't blame you for not wanting to get in the middle of litigation, but at the same time, I don't think Thursday is going to resolve the ultimate underlying issue. And I also think, quite frankly, the contract's in default because there's sales tax in arrears and there's the subcontract, which is prohibited under the contract. So I think you have those issues, and so I'm not real sure whether the judge grants an injunction on Thursday or not against Ms. Maddox being involved in Coastal Concessions, whether that actually solves the problem when you have two other individuals that are obligated under the contract. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Rayner, 975 Grand Canal Street. Gentlemen, I'm not going to sit here and get involved in a he said, she said. I am here. I wasn't even going to come up here until I heard Chairman Williamson and Commissioner Parker's comments. I will comment on that because I'm not sure if it matters if I support your request, but I can tell you that that pier is it's growing faster than anticipated. The kitchen area, too small, bar too small. Our area for the contract is too small. This summer we have AVP. I mean, we've got some serious, our Wednesday night movie nights have grown, and I believe a consulting firm, now at the same time, I understand the writing's on the wall as far as the contract, current contract. but I think it would be good for the county to put out an RFP and RFQ for a consulting firm, because if we stand a chance to become like a Pensacola Beach type of pier, then we need to be able to know what to propose. And I know last time when the proposals came out, it was me, Josh, and Joey, we had one proposal for 20 years, one proposal for 5, one proposal to give the county profit, one proposal monthly rent. And I know from looking back in years past, I definitely support a consulting firm coming in there and allowing people who want to rebid guidance and how to rebid it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the only concern I would have is that Thursday would turn into another week and another week after that, and moving forward with an RFP to plan the future of what that core area looks like would help us move forward regardless of any ongoing litigation. But is there any action that needs to be taken, Roy, today, or anything that we need to move to Thursday's agenda?
I don't think any action is appropriate at this time.
Okay. All right. Item number 3.
May I say something?
Go ahead.
It was unprofessional of me to address you and accuse you of being a liar. You hold a prominent position, and I apologize for that. We may disagree with how that meeting came out and what was said, but I should not have addressed you in that way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I've asked for a public records request for every email and text message between me and Ms. Moorhead, and when I have those together, I'll be publishing every one of them, and I'll let you decide on your own what you believe or don't believe.